Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashottara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashottara Sata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Go Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitya Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 2, titled Remembrance of Lord Krishna, text 25. Ali, you got it? Vishwan got you, looks like. You got it? Okay. Okay, so we'll start with word by word. Vasudevasya Devakyam Jataha Bhoja Indra Bandhane Chikirshuhu Bhagavan Asyaha Sham Ajena Abhyachitaha Vasudevasya Devakyam Vasudevasya Devakyam Jatu Bhojendra Bandhane Jato Bhojendra Bandhane Chikirshur Bhagavanasyaha Chikirshur Bhagavan Asya Shammajena Bhyachitaha Shammajena Bhyachitaha Vasudevasya Devakyam Jato Bhojendra Bandhane Chikirshur Bhagavanasya Shammajena Bhyachitaha Vasudevasya Devakyam Jato Bhojendra Bandhane Chikirshur Bhagavanasya Shammajena Bhyachitaha. Please chant. Vasudevasya Devakyam Jato Bhojendra Bandhane Chikirshur Bhagavanasya Shammajena Bhyachitaha Vasudevasya Devakyam Jato Bhojendra Bandhane Chikirshur Bhagavanasya Shammajena Bhyachitaha Vasudevasya Devakyam Jato Bhojendra Bandhane Chikirshur Bhagavanasya Shammajena Bhyachitaha Vasudevasya Devakyam Jato Bhojendra Bandhane Hirshur Bhagavanasya Shammajena Bhyachitaha Vasudevasya Devakyam Jato Bhojendra Bandhane Chikirshur Bhagavanasya Shammajena Bhyachitaha. Matajis? Vasudevasya Devakyam Jato Bhojendra Bandhane Chikirshur Bhagavanasya Shammajena Bhyachitaha. Vasudevasya Devakyam Jato Bhojendra Bandhane Chikirshur Bhagavanasya Shammajena Bhyachitaha. Vasudevasya, the wife of Vasudeva. Devakyam, in the womb of Devaki. Jataha, born of. Bhoja, Indra, of the king of the Bhojas. Bandhane, in the prison house. Chikirshuhu, for doing. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Asyaha, of the earth. Sham, welfare. Ajena, by Brahma. Abhyachitaha, being prayed for. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, being prayed to by Brahma to bring welfare to the earth, was begotten by Vasudeva in the womb of his wife Devaki in the prison house of the king of Bhoja. Purport. Although there is no difference between the Lord's pastimes of appearance and disappearance, the devotees do not generally discuss the subject matter of his disappearance. Vidura inquired indirectly from Uddhava about the incident of the Lord's disappearance by asking him to relate Krishna Katha, or topics on the history of Lord Krishna. Thus, Uddhava began the topics from the very beginning of his appearance as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki in the prison of Kamsa, the king of the Bhojas at Mathura. The Lord had no business in this world, but when he is so requested by his devotees like Brahma, he descends on the earth for the welfare of the entire universe. This is stated in Bhagavad Gita 4:8. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samstarpanathaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Om jnana timirandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurum militam yena tasmai shri guruve namaha. Shri Chaitanya manobishtam stapitam yena bhutale swayam rupa kada mahyam dadati svapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaf Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavari Pashtatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vasudevasya Devakyam, Jato Bojendra Bandhane, Chikirshur Bhagavanasya, Sham Ajena Biyachitaha. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, being prayed to by Brahma to bring welfare to the earth, was begotten by Vasudeva in the womb of his wife Devaki in the prison house of the king of Bhoja. We have been going through this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam titled Remembrance of Lord Krishna, where we've seen Vidura and Uddhava discuss different topics of Krishna Katha. Here, in particular, we're going to start the last section of this chapter, where Vidura is inquiring from Uddhava about the specific incidences about the Lord's pastimes. And the rest of the chapter will consist of different discussions between them, talking about the execution of the Lord's pastimes here on the planet. So we'll be talking about that for the next couple days. Just in brief, different topics of discussion of the Lord's pastimes. For more elaborate discussions, we have Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book, which details all these things and much more. And then we also have the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which really goes into depth and has Prabhupada's purports explaining everything. So in this particular verse here, Uddhava is talking about how Lord Sri Krishna first appeared in this world. We understand that his pastimes are eternal, but the manifestation of the Lord's pastimes on this earth and the beginning of that was related to Vidura by Uddhava here. Prabhupada would often describe Lord Krishna's pastimes using the analogy of the sun. Right? For us, we look out at the horizon day by day. We see the sun rise, we see the sun go throughout the day, and we see the sun set. And to us, it might appear as if the sun was not there at the beginning. Then later on throughout the day, the sun appeared and it shined and it did its duty of providing light for the whole world. And then it moves throughout the day and has a specific course and does specific things. And then gradually at the end of the day, the sun disappears behind the horizon and we think that the sun has gone somewhere else. But from the perspective of the sun, for us, there is no difference in its appearance and its disappearance. The sun is always the same. The sun is always executing its particular orbit. But for us, it just appears as if the sun is appearing and disappearing day by day. So similarly, the pastimes of the Lord, they're eternal. They're going on in every single universe. In every second, the Lord's pastimes are beginning and wrapping up in this material world. And of course, they're going on eternally forever in the spiritual world. So for us, it might appear like the Lord appeared at this specific time, executed his pastime for however many number of years, and then the Lord disappeared. But the Lord's pastimes are actually always going on. Just for us, this distinction between appearance and disappearance seems to be, which is why Srila Prabhupada begins his purport by saying that basically there's no difference between the appearance and the disappearance. But he specifically mentions the point that devotees don't really discuss the subject matter of his disappearance. Just because it elicits a particular emotional response in the devotees of the Lord, just as we understand that, as eternal spirit souls, this body isn't all in all, this life isn't all in all, and we'll continue existing eternally. Still, it's saddening and upsetting when different friends that you have in Krishna consciousness, and it's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam that when the spiritual master passes away from the mortal vision of the disciples, that the disciples should weep, and that it's a very saddening experience because we're able to actually experience the presence and the actions of the specific personality. And we can understand that While there's a philosophical understanding, for example, in the case of the spiritual master, that there's the Vani and there's the Vapu, and in one sense, the service of the Vani is even higher than the service of the manifest presence. But we can see that there's a particular benefit in the presence of the spiritual master. So similarly, in this specific appearance of the Lord, there is a extra experience that one gets in the presence of the Supreme Lord. So because this verse is talking about the appearance of the Supreme Lord, and specific instances such as Lord Brahma praying for the welfare of the earth, then how the Lord was begotten by Vasudeva and Devaki, and then the actual appearance of the Lord, I thought I would read those pastimes from the Krishna book, since the Lord's name, form, qualities, and pastimes are all non-different. So I thought it would be relishable to read these sections from Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book, starting from the very first chapter, Advent of Lord Krishna. The paragraph starting after all the demigods. Yeah, there we go. After all the demigods offered the Purusha Shukta prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they apparently heard no response. Then Lord Brahma personally sat in meditation, and there was a message transmission from the Lord to Brahma. Brahma then broadcasted the message to the demigods. That is the system of receiving Vedic knowledge. The Vedic knowledge is received first by Brahma from the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the medium of the heart. As stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Tane Brahma Hrida, the transcendental knowledge of the Vedas was transmitted to Lord Brahma through the heart. Here also, in the same way, only Brahma could understand the message transmitted by Lord Vishnu, and he broadcasted it to the demigods for their immediate action. The message was, the Supreme Personality of Godhead will appear on the earth very soon, along with his supreme powerful potencies. As long as he remains on the earth planet to execute his mission of annihilating the demons and establishing the devotees, the demigods should also remain there to assist him. They should all immediately take birth in the family of the Yadu dynasty, wherein the Lord will also appear in due course of time. The Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, Krishna, personally appeared as the son of Vasudeva. Before he appeared, all the demigods, along with their wives, appeared in different pious families in the world just to assist the Lord in executing his mission. The exact word used here is tat priyaritam, which means that the demigods should appear on the earth in order to please the Lord. In other words, any living entity who lives only to satisfy the Lord is a demigod. The demigods were further informed that the plenary portion of Lord Krishna, Ananta, who is maintaining the universal planets by extending his millions of hoods, would also appear on earth before Krishna's appearance. They were also informed that the external potency of Vishnu, Maya, with whom all the conditioned souls are enamored, would also appear just to execute the purpose of the Supreme Lord. So here we can see that as Uddhava is discussing how Lord Brahma prayed for the welfare of the earth and for the Lord to descend, this is more elaborately described in Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book, where the Lord Brahma and all of the demigods, they're praying on the causal ocean. They're praying to the Supreme Lord, and it isn't just that then the Lord manifests himself before them and personally spoke to them, but he actually related this transcendental knowledge into the heart of Lord Brahma. And then Lord Brahma was able to transmit this message to the rest of the demigods and instruct them thus. We can also see here in this particular pastime being described that the Lord doesn't just incarnate by himself. The Lord doesn't just appear alone to execute his pastimes, but the Lord and all of his devotees appear along with him. And we can see in all of the various pastimes that we read about, whether it's Nrsimhadev, whether it's Lord Ram, and in particular Krishna, we can see that he's always surrounded by his loving devotees. So this is the important point that Prabhupada's elaborating on here, is that Krishna doesn't just appear by himself, but he appears in the association with all of his devotees. And we can see in a particular instance similar to this was that of the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. Right? We can practically see that Advaita Acharya, he was praying for the Lord to descend to this world and to preach this message of Krishna consciousness. So a similar instance was happening in the appearance of Lord Chaitanya with Advaita Acharya, where he was offering this Ganga water and tulasi leaves, I believe it was, and just praying and weeping, crying for the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we can practically understand and see, as Srila Prabhupada mentions here in the purport, that the Lord has no business in this world, but when he is so requested by devotees like Lord Brahma, he descends on the earth for the welfare of the entire universe. Krishna is completely independent. He has, in one sense, as we read in the very beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it describes how the Lord is independent. There is no particular reason why he particularly needs to do anything. But we learn later on in that same first canto that while the Lord is completely independent and he's not controlled by anyone, he comes under the control of the love of the devotees. So that's what we can see here in the instance with Advaita Acharya and with Lord Brahma, very dear devotees of the Lord, that by their sincere prayer for the personality of Godhead to descend into this material world, which, as is described, the Lord has no business being in, the Lord descends for the pleasure of his devotees. So I'll read another section from Prabhupada's Krishna book, particularly talking about how Krishna was transmitted into the womb of Devaki. That is in the second chapter, paragraph starting, it's in the middle of the paragraph starting when Yoga Maya was thus ordered. It's a little further in. Anyway, I guess I'll just start reading. When Yoga Maya was thus ordered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, she circumambulated the Lord, then appeared within this material world according to his order. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead transferred Lord Shesha into the womb of Devaki to the womb of Rohini, both of them were under the spell of Yoga Maya, which is called Yoga Nidra. When this was done, people understood that Devaki's seventh pregnancy was a miscarriage. Thus, although Balaram appeared as the son of Devaki, he was transferred to the womb of Rohini to appear as her son. After this arrangement, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who was always ready to place his full potencies in his unalloyed devotees, entered as the Lord of the whole creation within the mind of Vasudeva. It is understood in this connection that the Lord first of all situated himself in the unalloyed heart of Vasudeva, and then was transferred to the heart of Devaki. He was not put into the womb of Devaki by seminal discharge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable potency, can appear in any way. It is not necessary for him to appear in the womb in the ordinary way by seminal injection within the womb of a woman. When Vasudeva was sustaining the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart, he appeared just like the glowing sun, whose shining rays are always unbearable and scorching to the common man. The form of the Lord situated in the pure unalloyed heart of Vasudeva is not different from the original form of Krishna. This appearance of the form of the Lord anywhere, and specifically within the heart, is called Dhamma. Dhamma does not only refer to the Lord's form, but his name, his form, his qualities, his paraphernalia, everything becomes manifest simultaneously. Thus, the eternal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with full potencies, was transferred from the mind of Vasudeva into the mind of Devaki, exactly as the sun's rays are transferred to the moon rising in the east. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, entered the body of Devaki from the body of Vasudeva. He was beyond the conditions of the ordinary living entity. When Krishna is there, it is to be understood that all his plenary expansions, such as Narayan, and incarnations like Lord Nrsimha and Varaha, are with him, and they are not subject to the conditions of material existence. In this way, Devaki became the residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is one without a second and the cause of all creation. Devaki became the residence of the Absolute Truth, but because she was within the house of Kamsa, she looked like a suppressed fire, or like misused education. When fire is covered by the walls of a pot, or is kept in a jug, the illuminating rays of the fire cannot be very much appreciated. Similarly, misused knowledge, which does not benefit people in general, is not much appreciated. So, Devaki was kept within the prison walls of Kamsa's palace, so no one could see her transcendental beauty, which resulted from her receiving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is quite literally describing how the Lord appeared within this material world, and how he eventually ended up in the womb of Devaki. And we can practically see that it's not like the way that any normal human being appears into this material world. Right? Normally, there has to be the union of a man and a woman. Then there's the seminal injection or discharge, which is described here by Srila Prabhupada. And then the pregnancy goes on and it occurs for about 9 months, then the child is born. But we can see here that Vasudeva, because of his love for Krishna, for his love of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna was actually situated within his heart. And from this Krishna, which was situated in his heart, which is non-different, as is described here, it is non-different than the actual Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, it was transferred into the mind of Devaki. And from there, it was transferred into the heart. And there, the Lord took shelter of the womb of Devaki. And thus he appeared in this way. And we can also see that this is not like any other ordinary pregnancy, and that when the Lord was not only situated in the heart of Vasudeva, but then put within the womb of Devaki, they actually, it's described that they were shining brightly just like the sun. So we can practically see that when people come into Krishna consciousness, and they, it's often said that when, devotees first shave up, especially when they have long hair. I know myself, I had very long hair at one point when I was first coming. And devotees said, when I came and I was shaved up and I was chanting 16 rounds, I was following the regular principles, they're like, wow, Prabhu, it's like you're glowing. And this is because when one is associating with the name, the form, the qualities, and the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they naturally become very bright. They actually seem to shine and to glow. And personally, being here at this initiation ceremony that we recently had, the devotees, they looked so effulgent at this time of initiation because they were so dedicated to Krishna, so dedicated to their spiritual master, that they were glowing because they had Krishna within their heart. So I'll read one last section here, specifically talking about when the Lord appeared, the chapter titled Birth of Lord Krishna. It's starting at the second paragraph, at that time. At that time, in all directions, east, west, north, south, everywhere, there was an atmosphere of peace and prosperity. There were auspicious stars visible in the sky, and on the surface in all towns and villages or pasturing grounds, and within the mind of everyone there were signs of good fortune. The rivers were flowing full of waters, and the lakes were beautifully decorated with lotus flowers. The forests were full of beautiful birds and peacocks. All the birds within the forest began to sing with sweet voices, and the peacocks began to dance along with their consorts. The wind blew very pleasantly, carrying the aroma of different flowers, and the sensation of bodily touch was very pleasing. At home, the brahmanas, who were accustomed to offer sacrifices in fire, found their homes very pleasant for offerings. Due to disturbances created by the demoniac kings, the sacrificial fire altar had been almost stopped in the house of brahmanas, but now they could find the opportunity to start the fire peacefully. Being forbidden to offer sacrifices, the brahmanas were very distressed in mind, intelligence, and activities. But just on the point of Krishna's appearance, automatically their minds became full of joy because they could hear loud vibrations in the sky of transcendental sounds proclaiming the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The denizens of the Gandharva and Kinnara planets began to sing. The denizens of Siddhaloka and the planets of the Channaras began to offer prayers in service of the Personality of Godhead. In the heavenly planets, the angels, along with their wives, accompanied by the Apsaras, began to dance. The great sages and the demigods, being pleased, began to shower flowers. At the seashore, there was the sound of mild waves, and above the sea there were clouds in the sky which began to thunder very pleasingly. When things were adjusted like this, Lord Vishnu, who residing in the heart of every living entity, appeared in the darkness of night as the Supreme Personality of Godhead before Devaki, who also appeared as one of the demigoddesses. The appearance of Lord Vishnu at that time could be compared to the full moon in the sky as it rises on the eastern horizon. The objection may be raised that since Krishna appeared on the 8th day of the waning moon, there could be no rising of the full moon. In answer to this, it may be said that Lord Krishna appeared in the dynasty which is in the hierarchy of the moon. Therefore, although the moon was incomplete on that night, because of the Lord's appearance in the dynasty wherein the moon himself is the original person, the moon was in an overjoyous condition. So by the grace of Krishna, he could appear just as the full moon. In an astronomical treatise by the Kamanikya, the constellations at the time of the appearance of Lord Krishna are very nicely described. It is confirmed that the child born at that auspicious moment was the Supreme Brahman, or the Absolute Truth. Vasudeva saw the wonderful child born as a baby with 4 hands holding conch shell, club, disc, and lotus flower, decorated with the mark of Srivatsa, wearing the jeweled necklace of Kaustuba stone, dressed in yellow silk, appearing dazzling like a bright blackish cloud, wearing a helmet bedecked with the Vaidurya stone, wearing bracelets, earrings, and similar other ornaments all over his body, and an abundance of hair on his head. Due to the extraordinary features of this child, Vasudeva was struck with wonder. How could a newly born child be so decorated? He could therefore understand that Lord Krishna had now appeared, and he had become overpowered by the occasion. Vasudeva very humbly wondered that although he was an ordinary living entity, conditioned by the material nature, and was externally imprisoned by Kamsa, the all-pervading personality of Godhead, Vishnu, or Krishna, was appearing as a child in his home, exactly in his original position. No earthly child is born with 4 hands, decorated with ornaments and nice clothing, fully equipped with all the signs of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Over and over again, Vasudeva glanced at his child, and he considered how to celebrate this auspicious moment. Generally, when a male child is born, he thought, people observe the occasion with jubilant celebrations, and in my home, although I am imprisoned, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has taken birth. How many millions of times should I prepare to observe this auspicious ceremony? So this being described here is the very nectarian and very auspicious appearance of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we can see that it was quite a joyous occasion. And by reading these pastimes of Krishna and his appearance over and over again, we can actually begin to get entrance into these pastimes. And we can see that this isn't like some mundane story or some fictional movie where you hear about it once, or you might watch a movie once and you might think this is very nice. And then the second time, you kind of already know everything, so you're like kind of predicting that this is going to happen, that that's going to happen, that this person's going to say this, and this person's going to do this action. And then the third time, you basically fall asleep while you're watching or hearing about it. But we can see that the pastimes of the Lord, they're more and more relishable with every time. And we can see every time that we hear about these pastimes of the Supreme Lord, that we get newfound entrance into these pastimes, that actually, the more and more we read and go through these pastimes, the more we can actually understand and relish them. So, a couple things that I would like to discuss about that specific appearance is particularly why Vasudeva and Devaki were chosen as Krishna's parents. there's a particular instance described by Srila Prabhupada where in their previous 2 lives, Vasudeva and Devaki actually had the Supreme Lord as their children before. Does anybody know what these incarnations were? Except for Mahotsa Prabhu, because I know he knows. No. That's right. So previously, the Lord appeared as the children of Vasudeva and Devaki, first as Prishnigarbha, then as Vamanadeva. So the pastime goes is that they were executing a lot of penances, a lot of austerity, and they were praying to have the Supreme Lord as their son. And actually, when they were praying, they prayed for it 3 times. Not that they prayed specifically to have the Lord as their child 3 times, but they said it 3 times. So the Lord took upon himself to greatly benefit them to appear as their child for 3 different times. First as Prishnigarbha, then Vamanadeva, and then here as Krishna. And Krishna later on tells him this in that same chapter that I was reading, that where you may have forgotten these previous instances, I can remember appearing previously as your children. And this particular appearance of the Supreme Lord and the nature of his appearance is described actually in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So I'll go through a couple of verses there, starting with verse 6 of the 4th chapter, where it starts, Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san prakritim svam adishtaya sambhavam yatma mayaya. Krishna says, although I am unborn, my transcendental body never deteriorates. Although I am the Lord of all sentient beings, I appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So we can see this is describing the nature of the birth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This was I kind of touched on this earlier, but the Lord doesn't just appear like any other human being in this material world. It isn't that we think that, the Lord took birth at this time and he underwent some activity. He seemed to be born as a baby, like almost every child is. Then he seemed to grow up and reach a certain age. But we can see that the Lord's lifetime is not like ours. It's described in this particular purport by Srila Prabhupada that Krishna never appeared older than the age of around 20 to 25. And we can see that there's almost no one in this material world, not almost no one, there is nobody in this material world who exhibits this. In fact, everybody's trying to achieve this. We can practically see that everybody who is getting older or going through this, process of life, which starts with birth, then old age, disease, and eventually death, that when one gets to this process of old age, they all want to become young. And I know Chandan Acharya Prabhu was describing one particular person who, because he's very rich, he's spending millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars on his body so he can look and feel and appear just like an 18-year-old boy. But we can practically see if you look at him and all like the plastic surgery and all the things that he's doing, he might look a little younger than his actual age. But one, he doesn't appear like an 18-year-old boy. And two, when you look at him, you don't see this glowing, effulgent, amazing form like you hear about with Krishna, but you just see, some ordinary guy. And just because he tries to make his body young doesn't mean that he'll be able to overcome death. And, right, just like everyone else in the material world, they're subject to this birth, death, old age, and disease. So no matter how much one tries, one will eventually come to the end of this material body. So actually, it's a useless endeavor to try to make this body young and endeavor so much in this regard to be youthful. But actually, in one's old age, as is described, so much one should be focusing on spiritual life. And that this process of, obsession with the body and being young, it's actually going in the exact opposite direction of what is recommended in the Vedic literatures that one should do in their old age. So this is going directly against which one should be doing at their age. And it's very much discouraged throughout all of the Vedic literatures. So I'll go to the next verse here. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanam dharmasya tadatmanam shijamyaham. Where Krishna says, whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descent of Bharat, I, as a predominant rise and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. And then quite similarly in the next verse, Krishna says, Puritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samstarpanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. That in order to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion, I advent myself millennium after millennium. So, just as is being described here that Krishna descends on the earth for the welfare of the entire universe, and this verse of Bhagavad Gita is actually quoted in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, Krishna descends for a particular purpose. And we can see every incarnation of Krishna descends for a particular purpose, to uplift the devotees and to annihilate the demons. And we can see that particularly in Shastra and in the Vedic literatures, there is a specific description and there is a specific inclination of what is and what isn't actually in Avatar. And one which is particularly being described here is that they descend for the welfare of everybody, and they uplift the devotees and they annihilate the demons. And so many other things are often described, how their birth is described in the Shastra. It's often described the specific family they'll appear in, where they'll appear. It's also often seen that they'll appear with particular markings on their body. I know I've been reading in throughout the 3rd, 4th, and 5th cantos, and particularly even Maharaj Prithu, who is a Sakya incarnation of the Supreme Lord, he still appears in a very particular way and with all these specific qualities, different markings on the feet. And I was also just reading in the instance of Lord Rishabdev that he also appeared with these particular qualities, markings on the feet. But we see that so many people in current society, specifically in India, I know His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami often states that, I think, he often quotes is that in the most recent poll in India, it was something like 300 something people that claim themselves to be incarnations of God currently in India. And it seems like almost every village in India has someone that proclaims themselves as God. And they often have some long beard, some long hair. They might speak something very nice and very deeply spiritual sounding. But we can practically see that these people are definitely not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One, these people are very ugly. Krishna is described as Satchit Ananda. He has this beautiful eternal form of knowledge and bliss. But these people, they're getting old, they're getting diseased, and they're also very ugly. I mean, we can see, for one, I'll cite this example because I've just been reading about it recently. We can see in the case of Lord Rishabdev, who was also incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to kind of distance himself from everybody in the world, it was described that he sat in one solitary place, he passed his own urine and stool, then he rolled around in it, just so he would appear as a very, let's just say, a person that people would not readily approach. But it was also described that I think it was for some 80 miles around where he was, this beautiful fragrance was exhibited from his own stool. So we can ask these people who claim themselves to be incarnations, okay, if you're in incarnation, then you can pass stool and have a wonderful fragrance coming around for the next 80 miles. But we can see that this is simply not the case with these kind of people. And they're just as disgusting as every other conditioned soul in this material world. And it's just crazy that they claim themselves to be an avatar or an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. So I'll go on, and this is the last one I'll quote, 4.9. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deham punar janma naiti mameti sorjuna. That one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So this is the result of learning about and hearing about the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That when one constantly hears about and meditates upon these things, they actually go back to the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In another instance in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes that one who desires to go to the demigods and worship the demigods attains the planet of the demigods. One who worships the forefathers can go to the planet of the forefathers. But one who worships me can actually get to the spiritual world and get to the Lord's personal abode. So by hearing about these pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by engaging in these topics of Krishna Katha, which we see Uddhava and Vidura engaging in, one can actually gain entrance into the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we can see that after this appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that this is celebrated every year, and we personally celebrate this every year as Sri Krishna Janmashtami. You know, it's a very amazing festival, especially here. I know because I've been to Janmashtami, various other places. But here, you know, I'm sure devotees remember there was that ecstatic kirtan at midnight. You know, we actually had to take the recording off of YouTube because basically the sound system just shut down and it sounded really crazy. But everybody was so ecstatic. Everyone was so jubilant. Then we had an amazing feast afterwards. And by engaging in, hearing about Krishna all throughout the day, I remember Vishnu Chitta Prabhu and Mahotsa Prabhu, they were giving classes. I think that day we had 6 total hours of classes or something like that. But it wasn't you were oh my God, when is this going to end? But every class, every moment was more and more and more relishable, even though you were tired because you hadn't eaten all day. Who doesn't eat for the whole day? Then they don't just sleep through half the day, but they're sitting, they're hearing, they stay up all the way till midnight, and they ecstatically chant and dance, have this amazing kirtan. Then they also have a big feast. And during the feast, I remember sitting with all of the devotees. It wasn't that we were talking some mundane subjects, but we're actually, it's kind of funny to remember, but we were talking about the different pastimes of Krishna, and if we were to have a play, who would play the different parts, and who would be Putana, who would be the other demons, who would be best in this pastime. We were Matsya Prabhu could probably be Lord Chaitanya because he's very tall and he has long arms. So we were talking like this because we were so inspired by hearing about the Lord's qualities, His name, and His pastimes all throughout the day. And this is what is this is Krishna consciousness. That one who constantly hears, he chants. This is the process recommended. This Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam. All of these different 9 aspects. By engaging in this is actual Krishna consciousness, right? This term Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada didn't just pick it because it sounded nice, or because it was some phrase and it was just some slogan, but it is actually the position of one who is in this movement, that one is constantly thinking about and remembering the name, form, qualities, pastimes of the Supreme Lord. I was listening to a class by Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, and he was describing Prahlad, who is described as Krishna Graha, which that his consciousness was affected by Krishna. And this particular term, Graha, he was describing, and it's also said in Prabhupada's books, that it's as if one is affected by a ghost, then that one is possessed. So Prahlad was so Krishna conscious that he almost seemed to be possessed with this Krishna consciousness. Means he was always talking about it, right? We can see that externally he was born in the family of demons, but he was so Krishna conscious that from a young age, after hearing from Narada Muni in the womb, at a young age he was always preaching Krishna consciousness. He was preaching it to his father, he was preaching it to his teachers, he was preaching it to his classmates. Anyone and everyone who would meet, he was preaching this Krishna consciousness. And another point that Bhakti Vikas Maharaj made in this lecture was the nature of the eternality of Krishna's pastimes. Because if you look at it, at least in the timeline of this specific kalpa, that the pastimes of Nrsimhadev and Prahlad Maharaj, they occurred before the supposed appearance of Krishna. But we can see that Prahlad was still so Krishna conscious. It wasn't that he was thinking of Vishnu or some other demigod, but it's specifically described Krishna Graha, that he was so Krishna conscious. He was meditating on this form of Krishna. So it isn't just that, after the appearance of Krishna, then this was all written down and people started worshiping Krishna and thinking about Krishna. But people have always been thinking about Krishna, and people will always continue to think about Krishna. Krishna's pastimes are eternal, and they're always being executed somewhere in this material world, and like I said, eternally in the spiritual world. So it's often thought by some people, and you meet, different Hindus, in particular when you're, out on book distribution at Patel Brothers or some Hindu temple. They're like, it's nice you're worshiping Krishna, but why not also worship Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma? Why not worship, every other incarnation of Krishna, just as basically the same? Why so much emphasis on Krishna? So in that regard, I'll quote a verse from Brahma Samhita 33. Me and Tapas Prabhu are going through Brahma Samhita right now. I'm trying to learn more verses so I don't come up here and not know anything. But it's described that Advaitam Achutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedeshu Durabam Adurabam Atma Bhakto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. It said that I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas but attainable by pure unalloyed devotees of... What is it? Yeah, it's the same. Pure, unalloyed devotees of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and eternal Purusha, yet he is the person possessing the beauty of a blossoming youth. So this is describing how, this Govinda, this beautiful form, this Navayovanam, this blooming youth, this personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original personality of Godhead. He's the origin of all these other incarnations. As Chandanacharya Prabhu was, he made this comment in the class that I gave last time that, it's like this analogy of the different candles, where, one candle can light a whole bunch of other candles, and those other candles might appear to be just like the same original candle. But without that original candle, none of these other candles can be lit. None of these other candles can be manifested and exhibit these same qualities as the original candle. So that's why this analogy was often given, because this is how Krishna relates to the other incarnations, right? Based on someone's particular rasa or relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Like if you tell Hanuman, for example, that, you're worshiping Lord Ram and that's very nice, but actually Krishna is supreme and you should stop worshiping Ram and actually worship Krishna. Hanuman will be like, I can't do that, I'm so devoted to Lord Ram, and so it won't be the same for him to worship Krishna. But in one sense, he's also worshiping Krishna because Ram is non-different from Krishna. But based off his particular relationship, he considers Lord Ram to be the object of love within his heart. Similarly, there's people who regard Krishna in more of this mood of awe and reverence, this Aishvarya Bhav, who consider Vishnu to be supreme and who want to go to the Vaikuntha planets, and we don't discourage them. We encourage them to, keep worshiping Krishna in the way and the relationship that they have. But it isn't that one can generalize this for everything. One should specifically know that there is bhakti, the bhakta, and then there's Bhagavan. And that bhakti can't just be placed for anything and everything, right? People People, for example, just because there was, a recent incidence of this, people, say, I worship Swami Narayan as God, and, I have so much bhakti for God because I worship Swami Narayan. But this person isn't an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Nowhere is it mentioned in the Shastra. Of course they'll say, the name Narayan, it's mentioned all throughout Shastra, but this particular individual, he isn't mentioned in the Shastra. He wasn't, like I was describing in the instance of Krishna. Even before Krishna's appearance, he was worshipped, right? But this Swami Narayan, people, anyway, it's some people, I know Mahotsa Prabhu often says that you don't know whether to laugh or cry. Because, it's just, so crazy. You're just oh, my God. These people, they're just completely, wasting their life by worshiping this person. Same with people, they worship other people, like I was describing, sadhus with big, long beards, just because they say something nice, right? But worshiping these people won't actually free people from the cycle of birth and death. They might be able to give you some ashes. I don't know why anyone would ever want just some ashes. Maybe you can, put them in a jar on your table and be like, this person gave me these ashes. But other than that, it's completely useless, right? You can just get some ashes and it's okay, I can say this person gave me some ashes. But what's the point? You're still going to be in the material world. You're still going to be suffering from birth, death, old age, and disease. And you won't actually get love of God. By worshiping this person, you'll just simply remain within the material world. And in one sense, it's kind of what these people want, because they're materialistic and they're worshiping this person because, if I worship this person, then my business will increase so much, or then my son will get a nice wife, or so many material things that they worship these people for. We can actually see that all these are useless. It's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam that things like this, they're just simply decorations on a dead body. Because, the analogy goes that a dead body, it might have the external appearance, similarly as in a live body, or a body which has a soul in it. And when the body is alive, you can put so many decorations, and you might decorate it so nicely. But if you just decorate a dead body, it's what the heck is the point? It's simply just a waste of time. You can decorate the dead body all you want, and we can see, people have all these different funerals where they pump chemicals into the body so it doesn't get all smelly and wrinkly, and skin starts to fall off and just bleeding everywhere. And then they might put makeup on it, so if it's an open casket, people will be able to remember this person as very nice and very beautiful. But we can see all this stuff is completely useless because the body is dead. It's just simply matter. There's no point. So similarly, by worshiping these so-called avatars, so-called incarnations, you don't actually get the result which was described as I was reading. Krishna says that one who relishes these pastimes, one who is Krishna conscious, they attain his abode. They go back to the spiritual world by worshiping Krishna. But by worshiping these people, or by disengaging in some mental speculation, some jnana, some other things, people don't actually get the full benefit. Prabhupada would often use this analogy of the jar of honey. That all these people, they see the jar of honey and they know it's so nice and so relishable, but just by licking the outside of the jar of honey, you don't get anything, right? You can only taste the honey, you can only relish the sweetness of the honey if you actually open up the jar and you get some honey out from the inside. You can lick the outside of the bottle all you want, but you won't actually get any honey. So similarly, we should fully dive into the nectarian pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which are just like honey. They're very sweet, they're very soothing, and they're very relishable. And one can also say that these pastimes of Krishna, they're very nice, and this celebration of Janmashtami, it's actually very nice. But actually, for us, maybe even more important than that is the appearance and the advent of Srila Prabhupada. Because without Srila Prabhupada, we wouldn't know anything about this. Without Prabhupada's books, without him training his disciples in this Vedic culture, And without Prabhupada at the age of 70 getting on a ship with, what was it, just like a couple books and 40 rupees, which he didn't even use, right? Without him coming over to preach this Krishna consciousness, we wouldn't know anything about these relishable pastimes. We'd simply be wasting our lives doing some other, God knows what we'd be doing, right? If we weren't given these books of Srila Prabhupada. And we can see that Prabhupada, he actually brought Krishna to the Western world. Because Krishna's name, his form, his qualities, his pastimes are actually non-different from Krishna. So Prabhupada, he initiated his disciples into the chanting of the holy name, which, he recommended his disciples chant at least 16 rounds every single day, so they could, like I was saying, they could be Krishna conscious. He also taught his disciples in worshiping of the deity form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is also non-different. And then Prabhupada also gave us all these wonderful books in which we were able to hear about all of the pastimes of Krishna, not only about Krishna, but all of his different incarnations, all his different pastimes, and also all of the devotees of the Supreme Lord. So without Srila Prabhupada, we actually wouldn't have any of these things. Not only would we not have any of these things, but then even if we might have known about it, we wouldn't have the potency to spread it all over the world, right? Because, we can say a couple things, we can preach something to somebody, but the actual only power and potency that we have is to give people Srila Prabhupada, because he actually has all the power and the potency given to him by his own spiritual master, and going all the way back, all the way to Krishna, but he was given this specific mission of spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. So by engaging in Prabhupada's service, we can actually give people this access and entrance into the pastimes that we're reading now that are so relishable, and that Uddhava and Vidura also found so relishable. We can actually give people entrance into these wonderful, amazing, relishable pastimes. So that's a main reason why Srila Prabhupada is the founder Acharya. We do Guru Puja every single day to Srila Prabhupada. And some people, unfortunately, they might say that, there's too much emphasis on Prabhupada within ISKCON. People who were initiated sannyasis by Srila Prabhupada, and who were even big gurus in the movement, and who have fallen down since, but they said things like this, that, there's too much emphasis on Prabhupada, we should emphasize more Lord Chaitanya instead. But we can see that without Srila Prabhupada, none of this would even be possible. Our whole lives are completely down to the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. We wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for Prabhupada. I know, at least for me, growing up, it didn't really click till later on, but I remember being at the temple for the celebration of Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja, and it just dawned on me that where I'm living right now, the friends that I have, the parents that I have, the food that I'm eating, basically my whole life wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for Srila Prabhupada, right? Because, it isn't just by some random chance that, people appear in certain, not appear, because we don't appear, but people are born in certain families that they are, right? It isn't just by some random chance, but, by the consciousness of the parents. They attract a certain soul and these kind of things. So practically, without Srila Prabhupada, my whole life basically wouldn't exist at all. And everything, and all of the wonderful friends that I have here, my wonderful parents that I had growing up, the specific community that I lived in with over 2,000 devotees living there, I probably wouldn't know anything about it if it wasn't for the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And me too, I even though I was born in that situation, I wouldn't have known anything either if I didn't actually started reading the books of Srila Prabhupada. Because that's how one actually gets, this divya gyan, this transcendental knowledge, that one actually has to read the books of Srila Prabhupada. One can't just be, there's this born Hindu thing that, oh, I'm a born Hindu, and just because I was born a Hindu, I'm better than you. But we can see just by practically being born in this Krishna conscious movement doesn't mean that we automatically know everything. As I personally know, by the first time that I came here, I thought that I knew a whole lot of things. But like the first day, I was like, damn, I don't know nothing, bro. There's a bhakta that's been here for 1 week and he knows more than I do, So by actually reading the books of Srila Prabhupada, we're actually able to, make our lives perfect, and we're also able to distribute this knowledge so easily, right? Pretty much nowadays, almost everybody can read. Most people, they don't like to read because their attention span is like that of a goldfish, but they have the ability to read. Anybody can physically sit down and be like, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, and anybody can go through and they can read these books, and it's pretty much described anywhere and everywhere this message that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have to surrender to Krishna. These are written and they're all throughout Prabhupada's books. So we should relish these pastimes and this appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Uddhava and Vidura are, but we should also give it to others as well. So I'll end my class there. Sorry, I went a little over time. But if there's any corrections, comments, or questions, I'll take those now. Rishi Kumar, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
You mentioned these bogus incarnations and like hearing. I think you mentioned about even like devotees maybe worshiping a bogus incarnation. I was wondering because I remembered reading Srila Prabhupada talking about these kind of bogus incarnations with like kick them in the face with boots.
Spiked boots.
Yeah, throw up. One of them was to throw like a pie in their face. I think there might have been one that even said like urinate on them, something like that. I don't know. So
I'm not saying Prabhupada's saying.
So I think like the idea is pretty clear, like the position of these bogus incarnations. So I was wondering like why do we see people who are devotees within ISKCON worshiping like a bogus incarnation, as far as I understand?
That's a very good question, actually, and I've been asking myself that personally. Like, if you've been in Prabhupada's movement for maybe like even over like 50 years, and you've read all of his books and you've been chanting the holy name, I guess in theory you have been, I guess, and you've been following the regular principles. Like, how is it that you come to this conclusion that you see people worshiping a bogus incarnation and you're like, oh, they have so much bhakti for God and they're so nicely worshiping God? We can see this isn't bhakti because bhakti means it has to relate to Bhagavan. And this person is definitely not Bhagavan from any sense of the term, he practically has no opulence, what to speak of any of the 6 opulences. Right? So anyway, like I said, we don't know whether to laugh or cry, so we just laugh. But it's a good question. Maybe you can go and ask them, and they might give you a particular answer. But I don't know what's going on in the mind of others. I'm not some like I don't have telepathy or anything like that. But when you figure it out, you can let me know, so I can also know. Any other questions? Ali? Online question?
Yeah.
Oh my.
No, it's not him, but it's Hare Krishna. It is? Oh, how long was Krishna in the womb for?
Good question. I don't know. Does Mitramana or Prabhu know? I don't know if it's like particularly described. I don't remember.
I don't think it says Balaram was transferred at 7 months. So why would speculate that Krishna was also 7 months or something like that? I didn't find that.
Yeah, I don't remember reading anything. Maybe Hotzer Prabhu has read like literally everything knows something. No? Okay. Yeah, I don't remember it being particularly described. I know it must have been for some period of time. It wasn't just like Krishna was there, then boom, then he just came out. Oh my God! Because Krishna wanting to be the child of Vasudeva and Devaki, he wanted them to have this mood of parental affection for him. So, I don't really know anything about this, but, I guess I can ask people who might, but I can just assume that, people who are pregnant and going to have a child, it's a close thing that you have, especially for the mother to be carrying the child within her womb. So it's a very personal thing, actually, that goes on. So I'm sure it must have been for some period of time. I know it's described, like, for example, like, what was it? Like, Shukadev Goswami was in the womb for, like, 16 years or something like that, and you're like, whoa, that's crazy. But, I mean, it was probably for some normal amount of time, like Mitravan was saying. You can speculate anywhere between, like, 7 months to, like, a year, just like normal child, I guess. That's what I would say, if I had to say something. Any other questions here? Mataji's, any questions? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.